Welcome to Freelance Sucks. Here we discuss the dark side of freelancing about which nobody usually talks out loud. In this show, we speak with experienced freelancers, and I'm sure listening to their stories helps you prepare for freelancers' challenges. My name is Yuri, I'm a community builder at Code Control and 9am.works, and my guest is Faith Rivera, a public speaker, change leader, and human development advocate who empowers people and helps them build skills and habits for a healthier future. So, welcome, Faith.
Thank you, Yuri.
The easiest question for you: what is the most challenging part of being a freelancer?
Oh, man. Like, can I only say one? I'm just kidding. I would say for me, the hardest part about being my own boss, building my own company is shutting my brain off. I
Hmm.
always have new ideas. There's always things to be done. The to-do list never stops. And so I think the hardest part is setting boundaries that I cannot or should not be working 24/7.
How do you do that? How do you shut your brain off jumping on another amazing idea right away?
Yes. So I've really had to set the boundaries of like the computer and the phone, not using them after like 7 p.m. There are some days that I work later than I would like to, just based on, when projects are due and things like that. A big thing for me is setting aside time to disconnect and to shut off. So the computer goes in the other room. Maybe I read or I journal, or, paint, just do something to kind of shut my brain off. Cooking helps me to do that. I love to cook. And so I'll often do my meal prepping at night before I go to bed, after I'm done with my work day. And just doing things that are not related to work really helps me to disconnect and really make sure that I'm not thinking about work up until it's time to go to bed.
I feel like it's still impossible to prevent totally, build this
Yeah.
self-defense systems that will fully close and fully shut down all the business thoughts that come into your mind. So I'm curious, if you are, for example, cooking and some amazing thought is coming to your mind right now, what do you do?
So I actually have a paper planner. For a long time, I refused to go back to paper, like when I was in college. And I've actually noticed this year, I started it again this year, is that's really helped me just to like physically write out versus getting out my phone or my computer to put it on a to-do list. So taking my planner out or a pen and paper and just writing down the thought, the idea, the to-do list. And then when I plan out my next day, I can kind of see if and where it falls into it. And then I'm also implementing a new project management system to track my tasks and
Hmm.
to-do list. And so when I write down that idea, that to-do list item, when I review my to-do list the next day, I can figure out where it goes.
Tell me more about the system.
So I'm actually using Notion. And I like it because it allows me to just brain dump everything. I've learned that when it's in my brain, it's going to keep spinning and cycling and cycling and cycling. But when it's out, whether it's on a physical paper or a virtual paper, it's not in my brain anymore and I can be a little bit more at peace. You know, there's always going to be to-do list items, like it never goes away. But when I have it all out there in front of me, and then I can look at that and my calendar kind of side to side, I can figure out, okay, for today only, what are the most important things that are going to get me closer to where I need to go?
How do you understand what is the most important thing? I mean, like prioritizing things. I feel like it's the hardest part, and sometimes you think like, "Oh, it's the most important. It's the most important," but then like, "Oh, maybe it's not." So, what is your system to find what's really important?
So I have some clients and friends of mine that like to use the Eisenhower matrix, where it's like the four quadrants. To
Mm.
me, that kind of stresses me out, if I'm being completely honest. So I wouldn't necessarily say I have a really concrete system, but I do it first thing every morning. Is
Mm.
I look at what's on the calendar for today and the next couple of days, and then what is the to-do list, and then kind of think about, okay, what pockets of time do I actually have to work on things? Because I don't just want to put something on the to-do list for it to keep cycling over for the next 7 days, but looking at realistically how much time do I have to complete tasks And do I need to start on this task today or can it be pushed off until tomorrow? Because I really, really try to keep my to-do list for that day to no more than 6 items. And then if I do happen to finish those items, I can choose, am I just going to call it quits for the day? Probably not, but maybe. Or do I want to add one or two more items and then celebrate when those are done too? Because I like the physical feeling, the dopamine hit of checking an item off of my to-do list. Like it makes me so excited. Um, and so when I can put items on my list, and sometimes they're not all work related, sometimes it's like, okay, I need to go get groceries. Because if it's not on the to-do list, it's not going to get done. It might be I need to do the dishes, but like, what are the 6 items within life and business that have to be done today?
Yeah, I have a pretty similar system. I created like a Google Sheets for myself, like this Monday, Tuesday to Friday, and I divided it like working stuff, like personal stuff. So something I have to do for my clients and the companies I'm working with, and something that I have to do for myself and like also like for my family, etc.
Yep.
And I totally get it, when you have let's say list of 5 items there and 5 items there, but when you finished, like no, I will get items from other days and put like to the like more and more and more. And I'm like, oh my God,
Yes.
it's never ending process. Like crazy. But what is the most time consuming thing you must do as a freelancer except for work itself? I mean, like for professional part.
Yeah, so I think outside of client specific work, what takes the most time, um, I would say is that relationship building piece because
Hmm.
they may or may not become clients. They may or may not refer people to you, but I try to be really intentional on how much time I'm spending networking and relationship building because there's so many events out there, virtual, in person, whatever. But I try to look at what kind of people is this event going to bring? And are they people that I want to professionally associate with? Or are they either my ideal clients or could they be my ideal clients or
Hmm.
connect to my ideal clients? Because I think at the beginning of my business or even, a year ago, I was going to so many networking events and being an empath, like I feel everyone's emotions. Like I'm a high energy person as
Hmm.
is, but when I'm around groups of people and I'm feeling every bit of energy from every person in the room, I'm exhausted. And it may be only 9:30 in the morning and I'm like, crap, now I have to come home and work. And I just went to 3 networking events before 9 a.m., which I'm not normally a morning person anyways. So I tried to do less morning networking and more like lunchtime networking.
Yeah, and I totally understand, and especially when some of your friends inviting you to a networking event, or
Yes.
they are hosting, and you kind of can't say no to them, but I learned to do it, like I always tell them, like, yeah, I really love you, you're my good friend, but I just can't, sorry. So, yeah. Okay, what is the most nerve-wracking thing you must do as a freelancer?
This is probably going to be an answer that people don't expect. But to me, the most nerve-wracking and stressful part for me is putting boundaries and time restraints on my calendar. I had to deal with this year because I'm in the great position of, being so full with my calendar, with my projects that I'm actually going to have to hire another person this year.
Hmm.
But it scared me at first to say I'm only going to accept networking meetings or like follow-up meetings for non-paying clients on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Hmm.
That scared the bejesus out of me because but what if this person could be my next $1 million client and they can only meet me on Mondays? I'm like, okay, well, then Faith, you can choose if you want to meet with them or not. But setting those boundaries of like, I don't take meetings on Monday mornings. I will do podcasts, but I will not take meetings on Monday mornings. Um, and, I don't plan anything on Fridays after a certain time. Like those boundaries were really scary for me because
Yeah.
it triggered that control response. Like I am a recovering control freak. And it's really scary to me when I see those blocks in my calendar and my brain's starts thinking, well, what if you lose people because your calendar isn't wide open? But
Yeah.
what I'm noticing is my calendar wide open actually gives me more anxiety because then people can book time that normally I would be using to focus on my newsletter or to write my book or to rest. And so that was a big shift I had to make this year, and it was honestly really scary.
I don't have really a Calendly link. So I I removed it. I had it before, but then I
Okay.
saw some random meetings popping up on my like what the hell? Like what is going on with me? And then I was like, no, sorry. So I still have a professional Calendly link like for the community I'm
Yeah.
working with so people can catch up and we can talk about their freelancing journey. But no more personal Calendly link. And every time I meet another person, I'm always asking them if they have Calendly link and if I can really choose because sometimes you don't know. Sometimes I might have, someone is not coming for a meeting or whatever. I have like 20 minutes and then I see, oh, they have like a slot like right there. Okay, I can jump there and I can replace it with another thing. But I totally get you. And I totally agree that life became so much better after I removed my calendar link.
Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's crazy. As a freelancer, do you ever feel professional loneliness?
Yes. I think part of it too is I went full time as an entrepreneur right as my husband and I were moving from the state that I grew up to a new state 1,000 miles away because he was starting residency. He was
Hmm.
starting the next phase of his medical training. But I didn't start building professional community within my business for almost a year after our move. And I definitely think that loneliness contributed to a lot of negative mental health pieces for me. But this last year, I focused really intentionally on building community with other business owners who
Hmm.
really understand what it is that I'm dealing with. Because it's great to have friends and family who support you, or they may ask you questions like, are you really sure that you want to do that? And it may not come from a bad place. Like they may truly be genuinely curious. But when you're in community with people who get it, who have had the struggles that you're having, or maybe are currently struggling with the same thing, it makes you feel less alone. And so that's a big recommendation I would have for people is even if it's just one or two people that are entrepreneurs, freelancers, like find your people that you can brainstorm with. If you need 5 minutes to complain, set your timer for 5 minutes to complain, but then get to those action items of like, okay, I know I'm frustrated, but like, what am I actually going to do about it? Because I
Yeah.
will say, I am all for a good vent session, but it turns into chronic negativity if there's never that next piece of I'm frustrated, but I don't do anything about it.
And I feel like it's a huge part of what won't ever, never make you a successful freelancer or entrepreneur if you are just complaining and
Exactly.
not, like I really, we had this podcast conversation with Nicolene Huzinga, and she told this amazing thing. Like it's actually Thomas Edison's quote, but oh, great, I've just found another way how it won't work. Let's move on. And that I feel like that has to be like entrepreneurs and freelancers mindset. Otherwise, yeah, maybe you have to have a manager and like not be a freelancer. If your friend, if your friend wanted to become a freelancer, what are top three things you'd advise them to consider before doing it?
So the first one is to really know why you want to do this. Because, if you're not clear on your why, oh man, you're in for a rough road. Number two, I would say is like really hone down on what makes you unique and who you serve. Because if you don't know your why, if you don't know your who, if you don't know your what, you're just going to run around in circles. And I did that for almost a year full time as an entrepreneur. I was just running around in circles and like, maybe I'm not good at this thing. No, Faith, you just weren't moving in any tangible direction. You were literally moving in circles. And then the third thing is set your boundaries now of like what time constraints are you willing to put on your calendar? When are you going to rest? Because you cannot work 365 days out of the year. You just really can't. Like you will burn out and you will burn out fast and you will resent your business. And even within those boundaries is like, who are you willing to work with and who are you not? Because
Yeah.
not everyone that you can serve should you serve.
I wish to have the sky's limit, but time is limit. So the final question. If you were starting freelancing today, what is one thing you would have done differently?
Hmm. If I was starting over and was going to do something different, I would say I would put together my systems and infrastructure earlier on,
Hmm.
versus having to do it now when, we're managing all the clients that we are. Even though it takes money and time to set up, it probably would have saved me a lot of headaches and like banging my head against the wall if I would have had my project management system, my CRM, my QuickBooks, like all of those different systems that you need earlier on.
Got it. Faith, thank you so much for sharing your experience and for having such an open conversation.
Yes, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button or 5 stars and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.